Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in. Welcome one and all to this newest edition of the VORW International Podcast, the late March edition 2025. Evidently, I hoped for it to have been the early March edition, but, well, life has a way of doing what it does, and I suppose, number one, I thank you all for your patience, and quite frankly, for your restraint, and I mean that. I'm not even saying that in some sort of facetious or demeaning way, and I apologize for the delay, but I still got the show out in the month of March, at least, so that, well, it doesn't really count for much, but perhaps it counts for a little bit of a little something. You know, my energy level and all of that, it's just, could be better. And I just do what I can, and I still wanted to do the show, of course, and I'm glad I was able to get this out at the end of the day. For those of you who have been long-time listeners, you should have seen how it was back in 2014. I was pumping out a show every single day. I don't know how I did it. It remains a mystery to me, but I did. And anyway, still glad to be here at the microphone and get programs out. Even, I suppose, as the saying goes, better late than never. Well, for those of you, as is tradition, who are checking the program out on YouTube, I would like for you to direct your attention to the description real quick. We have two pieces of fan art featured in the broadcast tonight. The first is a piece of pixel art going out to an anonymous listener, and the second piece of fan art is a collage of sorts, goes out to a listener who would like to be referred to as Weather Report 2 on Instagram. That's Weather Report 2 on Instagram. If you are feeling artistically inclined and would like to make a piece of fan art for the next program, I'll be happy to feature it. It's been a long-standing and long-running tradition on this program, going for well over 10 years now, where I'll take some fan art and I'll feature it on the YouTube upload of the podcast. Now, the name of the game with fan art, of course, is to have fun with it. It's totally up to your creative interpretation, whatever approach you'd like to take, whatever style you'd like to make, have fun with it, and just go with what you're feeling. That's what it's all about. Of course, if you are feeling artistically inclined and you'd like to make a piece of fan art to be featured in the next program, it's very easy. Have fun with it, make whatever you'd like, and then send it my way. All you have to do is send it to me via email, VORWINFO@gmail.com, and then also just let me know how you'd like to be credited. Now, that could be by name, that could be by a nickname. If you have a social media profile you'd like to link, where more of your work can be found, if you have a website you'd like for me to mention, a page that has your work on it, whatever it is, or if you'd like to be anonymous, please let me know. You took the time and effort to make that piece of fan art, so the very least I can do is give credit where credit is due. Like I said, if you'd like to remain anonymous, that's fine. You saw one of the listeners in today's program did. Nothing wrong with that. Also understand, if you don't let me know how you'd like to be credited, I will keep you anonymous by default. Better safe than sorry, that's the approach I take. Just keep that in mind. Alright, with that mentioned, we have a few sponsors for today's program. They help keep the show on the air. They especially help keep the shortwave broadcasts on the air, which is very much appreciated. So, take a listen, lend an ear to what they have to offer. Just understand the help that they really do to this podcast and my radio show through their sponsorship. If you're looking for something fresh and unique, this broadcast is brought to you by independent musician Liam Stark, who recently released his album, Home. Home was recorded at the Blue Moon Theatre in Woodstown, New Jersey, with the help of fellow artists John Payano and Landon Axel. You can stream or purchase the album on major platforms. Just look up Liam Stark, Home, wherever you get your music. And if you'd like a physical copy, Liam is giving away CDs to the first 25 people who sign up for his Patreon at patreon.com/Liam Stark. That's LIAMSTARK. Again, if you're a fan of independent music and want to support an artist doing things his own way, check it out. That's Home by Liam Stark. Available now. Whether you're simply heading out for a weekend of camping or hiking, or are a hardcore prepper getting ready for the apocalypse, if you want to be able to procure food in an emergency, you need the Rule the Wasteland Deluxe Survival Fishing Kit. Available on Amazon and at rulethewasteland.com, this deluxe kit is unlike any other kit on the market, which are all feeble gimmicks and only a few paltry pieces. The Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit is designed with everything you actually need to catch fish in a survival situation, including over 250 feet of fishing line, more than 35 various size hooks, multiple bobbers and lures, and even a mini multi-tool. And everything is packed securely in a watertight aluminum tin that fits in the palm of your hand. Put them in your car kit, bug-out bag, or just throw one in your pocket before heading outdoors. Visit rulethewasteland.com and use the code VORW for 10% off both the deluxe and micro versions, or simply search Amazon for Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit. Again, the website, rulethewasteland.com. That's rulethewasteland.com. Use that code VORW, 10% discount if you use it. Rule the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit, available at the website or on Amazon.com. For any real estate agents, builders, or business professionals out there, first impressions matter. Whether you're selling a property, showcasing your work, or marketing yourself, high-quality visuals can make all the difference. And that's where multi-focus media comes in. We create stunning real estate photography, cinematic videos, and professional headshots to help you stand out. We specialize in real estate photography, cinematic walkthrough videos, aerial drone shots, and digital enhancements like virtual staging and floor plans. But we don't stop there. We also work with commercial builders and remodelers, capturing progress photos throughout a construction project and delivering final marketing images that showcase a builder or architect's craftsmanship. Beyond real estate, we also offer professional headshots at our studio in Central Connecticut, perfect for realtors, executives, and business owners who need a polished, professional image. Our clients trust us for next-day delivery, eye-catching visuals, and reliability. Whether you need a full suite of real estate marketing assets, progress documentation for a construction project, or a professional headshot that elevates your personal brand, we make the process seamless and stress-free. Unlike big-box media companies, we tailor our services to your needs, giving you the personalized attention and high-quality results that make your listings, projects, and brand stand out. The success stories speak for themselves. One of our real estate clients told us, "I listed a home with Multifocus Media's photos and video, and we had multiple offers within 24 hours. A builder we worked with said, "The progress photos you captured helped us keep our stakeholders updated, and the final images were perfect for our website and marketing materials." That's the power of great visuals. If you're a real estate professional, a commercial builder, or a business owner in Connecticut, let Multifocus Media help you stand out. You can visit their website, www.multifocusmedia.com, multifocusmedia.com, see their work, and book your next session. Whether it's a real estate shoot, construction project documentation, or professional headshot, we make sure you look your best. That again is multifocusmedia.com. Check out the website, see the results for yourself. Multifocus Media, because great visuals don't just capture attention, they create opportunities. And there you have it. If you are interested in promoting a product, a service, social media profile, could be your work, could be your business, like I said, your service, could be your music, could be a product you've come up, whatever it is, right? If you'd like to promote it on this program, there's still room available for sponsors going forward. As I always mention, I just throw this out there because it's a way, really it just helps me with the airtime bills for the shortwave broadcasts that I do, because I have to pay as I go, as far as that's concerned. I enjoy doing it, so I'm not going to be giving that up anytime soon, but money doesn't grow on trees, and it's just a way, it's not some sort of way for me to, rake in the millions or anything. Really, the price for any sorts of sponsorships and advertisements here on this program is well below what I should be charging, so I just do it to try to make it affordable for you, but also an easy way that I could just try to supplement some income so I could keep the radio bills paid. There's the honest truth as to why I do it. So as a result, you're bound to get a good deal as far as the exposure is concerned. Generally speaking, I will sell the slots as far as advertisements are concerned. 5 episodes a piece, so you just pay really just a small lump sum, and then your advertisement, I do usually ad reads, is featured in the next 5 shows. There you go. That could be for 6 months or longer at a time, and if it's a continuous project, of course, that you have, I'd even be willing to update the ads with time if necessary. So, I'm very flexible in that regard, and if you have an idea, if there's something that you'd like to promote, shoot me an email, and there's no harm in asking. That's the way I look at it. Shoot me an email, I'll send a quote your way, I'll send you some information about how things are done, and the choice is yours. But like I said, there's never any harm in simply asking, getting some information, and if it doesn't work out, or if it's just not of interest, no hard feelings here, so ask away, perfectly fine by me. But hey, hopefully we can work something out. Really just helps everyone, helps my broadcast stay on the air, and it'll give you some exposure and some attention to promote, again, your service, your product, your profile, whatever it is that you do. Very flexible. If you're interested, let me know. Send in an email, and I'll get right back to you with some information, a information packet, as I call it. VORWINFO@gmail.com, and likewise, of course, if you would like to support this program and my radio broadcast without doing any sort of advertising or sponsorship, you could always send in a donation via PayPal to VORWINFO@gmail.com, or via Patreon, patreon.com/TheReportOfTheWeek. If you support the program on the Patreon page, that's the best way I could give back directly. If you support it on the Patreon, you can access, on demand, all my radio shows, unlimited listening, thousands of hours of additional content. I know it's not much, but it's the least I can do to try to give back for your support there that keeps all this going. So, there we go. Basic procedural stuff, but, I pass the hat around. I do it because I have to do it, and, you have to let folks know that all this stuff out there exists, and, you know the way it goes. So, it was funny. The other day, I was feeling motivated to try to finish things up, because again, I'm well aware I've been running late on this program, and I've been eager to try to finish things up here. And you see, the thing is, in my case, is that I try to fight, it's sort of like an internal battle of sorts, right, wherein I don't want to rush it. I don't want to rush something and then deliver what at least I interpret as total garbage, and, just make it fast. I want to try to give you something that at least I hope is worth listening to, so I don't want to necessarily rush it. And then at the same time, there are days, especially this month has been iffy, wherein my body has its own agenda and, sort of sets the limitations for me, which is just great, but it's just the way it is. So it's like, my mind can be on one page, but I don't have the energy to properly do it, or, I can just be down for the count or whatever it might be. And it's trying to thread the needle, on those good days to, especially when I feel that motivation and feel like I can, to try to take advantage of that and, do what I can. But anyway, so amusingly, a couple days ago, because as the month has been dragging on, I've been a little bit restless, I've been wanting to finish this, but like I said, it's when the opportunity arises. But I've been a little antsy wanting to finish this. A couple days ago, the motivation was there, but it was, number one, it was at an inopportune time. I was already starting to get a bit tired, just naturally, just starting to wind down. And I knew I wasn't going to be up for too much longer. So already, right, that's a little bit of a limitation there. But I thought to myself, well, still, I'm feeling it, so I can get to the microphone and I could, crack away at least at something. Maybe do an intro or finish up with a few emails. And, hey, any progress, right, to finish this up and get this out to everyone, it's fine by me. So I thought, okay, what the heck. Gonna get everything set up, gonna get the microphone set up, all that good stuff. And, that'll be that. So, alright, I'm feeling it. I move my setup over here into my office. I always record at the desk and have the microphone set up on a stand, and, I try to do that. So I move everything in, get some water. I say, okay, I think I got everything I need. Let me get the microphone plugged in here, and let's get down to business. So, technology is what it is, and sometimes these things just happen, but the timing of this couldn't have been worse. Something got messed up when I plugged in the microphone. Now, this doesn't really happen. I feel like the universe just had it out for me that day. Plug in the microphone, right? So that's the last step. I got everything else. I'm all ready to go, ready and rearing to go. And plug in the microphone, and all of a sudden the screen on my computer just freezes. It's not the blue screen, but it just totally freezes. It's unresponsive. Nothing's updating, the clock isn't updating, if I move the mouse, it's totally frozen. Nothing works whatsoever, it's just totally unresponsive. I thought to myself, oh, this is just great. It couldn't have been any better timing that the one time where I'm really rearing to go to crack away at this, the computer freezes on me. So I tried troubleshooting. It's dead in the water. All I could do at this point, I gave it some time, gave it 10 minutes, because sometimes things, if you even just let it be for a little bit, sometimes it'll actually just resolve on its own. And doing nothing is sometimes the best thing to do. But in this case, that didn't happen. And 10 minutes had gone by. I was already more tired then than I was at the beginning, because again, I thought, okay, I might have like 30 minutes of energy left in me, so, I'll see what I could crack away at, or whatever. I had to force the computer to shut down. That's all I could do. I had to hold the power button, force it to shut down, and in doing so, I lost everything that I had up. I had to restart, get everything back up, load everything. Then I had to sign everything back in because the session I had at the time closed and I lost everything I had there. Log back into everything. That was a whole process. And anyway, to cut the long story short, by the time everything was all set up and I was ready to go, my train of thought was, disrupted. I wasn't necessarily as motivated anymore because all of a sudden I was too busy troubleshooting all of this, and I was getting too tired to do much. So I did all that for nothing, and I said, well, you know what, it's just, today's not my day. I'm just going to try to get some sleep. I'm just going to get comfortable, and, I tried, and failed, and we'll see what happens, in a day or two. And here I am now, and things are working out much better, at least. So, aside from that, just a little random anecdote. If you're out there watching this on YouTube, just take a look at the screen real quick, and if you're on a podcast platform, maybe look at the description of this. If you listen to my radio show on the shortwave, some of the frequencies, or particularly the times that you hear my show at, have changed. And I just need you all to be aware of that, especially earlier in the month with the whole daylight saving time change. Some of the broadcasts did change, so just take a look. The main airings on 4840 kilohertz are unchanged. Nothing has changed there. The main repeat airings on 5950 kilohertz have not changed. The main broadcast to Europe, the Middle East, and South Asia might have changed somewhat. Just know it remains at 1530 UTC. Alright, so it's going to stay there. 1530 UTC every Monday morning. That's 11:30 a.m. Eastern every Monday morning. So just know that broadcast sticks with UTC time. So for listeners over there in Europe, it might change by an hour, but just keep that in mind. But the frequency for that remains the same, 17,810 kilohertz every Monday, and that broadcast has been doing fantastic. But otherwise, you can look at all the other repeats. Some of the airings have changed and have moved an hour later. Some of them are the same. So just consult the schedule there. But if you have any reception issues or you want any clarification for anything, any sorts of radio-related troubleshooting, if you want the best frequencies for your area, if you have a radio but you want some reception tips, feel free to reach out. And likewise, if you would like to get a radio to listen to this broadcast and many others on a shortwave radio, you know that this medium is my passion, and this state that we're in with international broadcasting certainly isn't good, but there's still some life left in it, and shortwave still is an invaluable medium, even in 2025. Way I look at it, enjoy what's left, and radio, it's one of those technologies that sometimes we forget about it, but if a time comes where everything else fails, you'll be glad you had it, especially as far as severe weather and all of that is concerned. But, of course, depending on where you are, times of civil unrest, war, or severe natural disaster, censorship, etc., radio, it's just a good fallback to have. It's old reliable, but it's reliable, and that's what matters most. So, if you'd like to get a shortwave radio, like I said, this is my passion, and I'll sit here, I'll help you out. You can send me an email, vorwinfo@gmail.com. I'll send some recommendations your way. Like I said, if you need a broadcast schedule, you want the best frequencies for your area, or if you got a radio but you can't get the signal all too well, let me know, and I could try to help you troubleshoot as well, because there are some ways, some very effective ways at that could improve reception on your end. Alright, so, all that aside, the subject for today's program was decision-making, and the prompt I gave in the last show was essentially that sometimes we make decisions without realizing how much they'll shape our future. And like I mentioned back then, what really prompted this for me was 14 years ago. I made that decision to start the YouTube channel, The Report of the Week. It was just something fun to do on the weekends. I had no audience, no expectations, just a little bit of curiosity, and well, now all these years later, it's become my full-time livelihood. So thinking back to that, thinking back especially to the anniversary of the YouTube channel, which, like I said, now celebrating 14 years, that got me thinking about what decisions, big or small, have shaped your life in unexpected or significant ways. Obviously, this is a personal question, and it varies very deeply and significantly to the individual, but we got a lot of great responses, a lot of very thoughtful, I feel, and very thought-provoking, sincere responses that came in that I think are going to be very interesting to cover over the next hour or two. You might be wondering, so what's going to be the next show? And I've decided, just to spend a little time catching up, the next broadcast is going to be a random mailbag show. So if you would like to send in any random questions for me that you have, any topic suggestions, anything you'd like to share or discuss, or anything you'd like to hear my thoughts on, you can just send me an email, and I'll just open up the inbox and read and respond to whatever comes in. I hope to get the show out, the next one, the random show, sometime in April. And then in that show, we're going to reintroduce a new question and get that going again. So this is just going to be a little bit of a break because the last two shows have been very structured with two specific questions. But this one, it's just going to be ask whatever you want or talk about whatever you want. We'll take things on a bit of a random note in that regard. And then after that, we'll introduce another topic and take it from there. So, if you'd like to send in any questions or comments or pieces of feedback for the next program, again, a random mailbag show, it's the same email address that I've recited probably 3 or 4 times already, VORWINFO@gmail.com. If you want to write in, I encourage you to do so, and I look forward to hearing from you. So, with that, let's open up the email now and let's take a look at what decisions that you made, big or small, that shaped your life in unexpected ways. Jamie in Las Vegas, Nevada checks in. Hello, VORW. This email is in response to your question for the next podcast regarding a big or small decision I made that changed my life. For me, it was joining the Army in 2004 and serving until 2009. I'll keep this short and give you a brief reason why I joined and how greatly it impacted my life based on that decision. You see, I had a terrible home life before the military. There was a lot of moving around, family not being able to pay the bills, going days and nights without food, etc. So I joined the Army at 20 for hopes of getting out of that situation. Since I got out, I continued to receive free medical care through VA medical facilities, and I was able to use the GI Bill for college, even though I never finished getting a degree. I am service-connected, meaning I receive a monthly disability pension, which covers all my bills. That disability pension could be good or bad, depending on how you look at it, but nevertheless, without it, I would be living paycheck to paycheck to this day. I also work for the Department of Veterans Affairs, which mostly hires and gives preference to military veterans, and the position I have is good and stable, and I'm thankful for it. So Jamie, in Las Vegas, Nevada, checking in, I thought that was a good start to things, and I think it gives some very interesting perspective, when it comes down to joining the armed forces. It's certainly a choice. And it's a lifestyle that most definitely isn't for everyone. And, of course, you'll have people out there who are proponents for enlisting and folks that would say, no, don't you ever sign up, etc., etc., right? But the way I look at it is that really, I think it should come down to the individual, and certainly there are various incentives that do exist for a reason, but some of those incentives, as you saw in your case, can make a huge life-changing decision for the better. And obviously life beforehand certainly was not good, but being able to join, it obviously made a huge difference that you feel to this day. Even when you joined the Army back in 2004, that's over 20 years ago now, which is quite surreal to think, but, you still feel the effects of it to this day, and it really, I think, sort of established almost your path in life, so to speak. I thought that was some very interesting perspective, and Jamie, I thank you for taking the time to write and send that in, and of course I thank you for your service as well to this country. Patrick from San Francisco, California writes, I can't say I've made any decisions as momentous as your joining YouTube, for instance, but I've made a few over the years that have had a large impact on my life. I settled on one that was not necessarily good or bad, but I think about it sometimes. I made a rather important decision soon after completing my Bachelor's of Science degree. Immediately following undergraduate, I chose to go into the workforce, despite my concentration all but requiring graduate education to hold more than a narrow range of positions. This was not the decision at hand, however. I did this because I wanted to consider my options and career paths before deciding what to pursue. I ultimately chose to pursue only one path in particular. That was the decision. I wonder where I'd be today if I decided to go into patent law, as I wanted to originally, rather than choosing to further study and later work in a niche subfield within a niche subfield. I say this because I have found that I do not always want to tell people about what I do, largely because it seems to universally elicit glassy-eyed looks and boredom. Every time this occurs, it eats at me a bit, and I think about what it would have been like to become a lawyer, rather than an exceptionally boring flavor of electrical engineer. I'm not unhappy, generally, but regardless, I know my life would be quite different if I had chosen to walk that other path. All the best from Patrick in San Francisco, California. That was an interesting one, Patrick. Thanks for taking the time to write as well. And it is interesting to think about, where it's like, because when there's that open-endedness to things, and that's obviously the whole point of this all, we don't necessarily have that crystal ball. And obviously, when you look back retrospectively, there are some life paths and decisions wherein you could sort of look back and you could essentially infer with a degree of accuracy what might have happened if you had taken a different course of action. But there are those cases where it's less certain, and it's like if you ended up going into, let's say, the field of law, and you ended up becoming a lawyer, it might be more recognizable a position, but would it bring happiness with it? Really don't know. I mean, there's a possibility that it could be, but there are times where it's like it may bring about recognition, may pay the bills, but at the same time it might be so draining and demanding, and it might not be something that you necessarily enjoy, that it's like you're sort of selling your soul at the same time, if that makes any sense. But it's interesting to think about those what-ifs, I mean, as for me, when I think back to the YouTube channel and all that, and what I would have done if it weren't for this channel, here I am, 14 years later, and I still don't know. And I've talked about this for years, that I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I didn't really see much in the way of any future. If it weren't for this channel, I had no clue, and it was getting to the point where I was, I really had no idea. There was no sort of calling, in my case, if that makes sense. And I wouldn't go as far as to use the word envy. I wouldn't say that. But I'll look at those folks that seemingly have everything figured out, The types where it's like, they know exactly what they want in life. They know exactly what appeals to them, what field they're interested in, what they like doing, and they don't even need to think about it. It comes naturally to them. It's like, all right, I'm going to be a pilot, or I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to get in this field or that field or whatever. It's like, but it comes so naturally. They don't even have to think about it. They just know. And I've never been that way. It's like people ask me, I get this question all the time, well, if it weren't for the YouTube, what would you be doing? I sit there and I think to myself, I don't know. And the best part of it is that 10 years ago, that was my answer as well. I don't know. 10 years later, things thankfully worked out with the YouTube so that I could at least say that this is what I do. But there was no sort of revelation that came. And it's a whole decade, And in that time, in all those years, there hasn't been any sort of revelation. There hasn't been any sort of eureka moment that ever came to me that made me think, aha, well, if the YouTube never happened, then my true calling would be, whatever. You could insert whatever career you want. It never happened. I've no more clarity today than I did a decade ago. It's funny how that is sometimes. I don't know how people do it. I really don't, because it's just so foreign to me, I guess. Right? Because it's something that just never came to me. Which is what makes it so mysterious in a sense. It's like, how did they do that? How did they do it? Was that a loss? What do we have? What do we have next? Well, it's interesting. This is similar to the first email, but again, this is understandable as to why, and I'm sure this for many holds true as well. Connor from Texas checks in. During COVID, I was laid off and laying at home bored when I decided to join the military. I enlisted in the Guard 1 weekend a month and 1 week a year, essentially on a whim. I'd always wanted to serve and decided to jump in. Fast forward 4 years, and I'm a corporal and in charge of a supply section at my battalion. I went on deployment last year and met the woman that I am going to make my wife. I haven't had great success with job stability, but the Guard has given me stability, meeting some amazing people, including the love of my life, and giving me a sense of purpose and duty. It's the best decision I've ever made. Thanks for the content, as always. Thank you, Connor, over there in Texas, checking in, and congratulations on all that you've achieved by enlisting there. I think that's a great example, though, again, like we covered earlier, of sometimes for some folks how enlisting really can be sometimes the best thing that's happened to people. And as you could see in this particular instance, during COVID, a time that I think for many was filled with, at the very least, a lot of confusion, a lot of despondency, a lot of hopelessness, and uncertainty, a lot of instability, right? A lot of people lost their jobs, or their future seemed uncertain at that point, and left stuck at home thinking, well, what now? Right? What now? Had everything planned out, and now it just came crashing down, so what do I do now? And you made the decision, you weren't sure what was going to come of it, but you made that decision to enlist, and based on what you wrote, like you said, best decision you ever made. Everything worked out. I imagine, going into it, when you first enlisted, you had no idea how things would end up playing out. If you had no idea. But now looking at things, you've had success in your field, and then as far as personal life is concerned, outstanding developments there, which I give you my sincere congratulations for. So I think that's just a good example right there, a good positive example of how things looked very uncertain, but you made that one decision, you didn't know what was going to happen, and everything just came together and worked out, I would wager, as well as it possibly could have. This is a good one. Corwin checks in. Looking back in life, one moment that stands out as life-altering. When I was in 8th grade, the band teacher suggested we do marching band in high school. My friends wanted me to do marching band in high school. My parents wanted me to do it. I even did a summer music camp, and strangers who were in the high school marching band wanted me to do it. But me, I did not want to. Well, safe to say, peer pressure won out, and now, years later, I'm a music teacher. The way one little chance like that set into motion a chain of events that led me to where I am is crazy to think about. And the best and most ironic part of it all, to think of all those people, they were wrong. I personally did not like marching band. All 8 years I spent doing it. Torture. But at least I made something come of it in the end. Thanks, from Corwin. That one had a little bit of a twist to it, and that threw me off, because I looked at that. I thought, okay, well, I see where this is going, right? Everyone's pressuring you to do the marching band, and, you didn't want to do it, and then it turns out you ended up becoming a music teacher later on, so, the way I thought it was going to be is that you had those self-doubts, and turns out, that everyone else saw the potential, and then the marching band turned out to be the best time ever, so much so that you became a music teacher. Only to mention, no, it was a living hell, but I still made something of it. That was good. Corwin, thank you. Jack in South Wales, UK, checks in next. In response to your question in the latest podcast about a decision that changed my life, here is my response. The greatest decision I've come to make is to continue my studies at university. I dropped out in 2020 after 1 year of study and worked some dead-end jobs for 3 years. In 2024, I decided I wanted to get more out of life and decided to pursue my passion for physics once again. I'm in the second semester of my second year and all is going well. Studying physics again has illuminated my life in a whole different way. Jack in South Wales, UK, checking in. Thank you for writing in, and I wish you most sincerely the best of luck in your studies. Kenny from Michigan, on a similar note, writes, I wanted to quickly respond to your question. For me, the decision was impulsively applying to the farthest college I could find within my state. The school had a major I was okay with, and I was accepted in October 2021. No hesitation. At the time, I didn't know much about the college itself, but I knew I needed some space away from growing up in the city. Fast forward to March 2022, when I toured the campus with my dad, I instantly fell in love with the area. It's the most northern university in Michigan, surrounded by massive mountains, rushing waterfalls, all kinds of wildlife. The winters are bitterly cold, but they come bright with northern lights and snow that transform the landscape. It's wild to think that this August I'll be moving back to start my 4th and final year of my bachelor's degree, and this time with my girlfriend by my side. Just wanted to say thank you for all the work you do. Your content has been a constant for me through this journey. Take care, from Kenny. Kenny in Michigan, and thank you for your sincere compliment. It really means a lot that these programs of mine have been with you on this journey, and I sincerely, again, wish you the best of luck in your studies. The way you describe that college is quite beautiful, I really must say. Very picturesque, and it sounds, to me anyway, like it would be very peaceful. And while the winters may be bitterly cold, at least you do have the snow and the northern lights, and granted, some of you who are long-time listeners, I'm sure, know this, but for those of you that don't, obviously I'm in Florida, but I was born and raised up north, so I'm very well acquainted with the winter weather, and snow really is a beautiful thing. And nowadays, of course, being that I don't see much of it, on the rare occasions wherein I've the opportunity to see any, generally if I'm up north visiting family and the like, it's something that I really take that time to appreciate, where in the past I always liked the snow, but now I'll just take a minute to stop and really just take it in and observe what, to me anyway, is its natural beauty. Because again, in my opinion, I think the snow is quite beautiful, especially when it's falling. It's so pretty and peaceful and really, as I'm sure many of you listening understand, how it can just transform an environment. And I don't know, it just adds to everything in a way, snow-covered. We hear from Philip, who writes, "My life changed drastically last year. I, like many others, struggled to find my place in the world once high school ended. I floated around from job to job, never taking them seriously because I didn't want to be there any longer than I had to. I stopped taking care of my health and made some poor decisions, as most young men do when they don't have a direction in life. I ended up stumbling into a job I didn't hate in 2022. It was the first good decision I made since being independent. Waking up without the dread of a long work day was invigorating, and it was the beginning of rebuilding my life from the ground up. Cut to January of 2024. I made a New Year's resolution to lose weight and get my health back under control. Ironically, I had a severe fast food addiction where I'd eat large portions 2 to 3 times a day, and overcoming that addiction was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Took a couple months of strict discipline, but I finally got into the habit of healthier eating and regular exercise. And now, fast food is more of an occasional treat every now and then, rather than most of my diet. I went from 245 pounds, that would be around 111 kilograms, to 175 pounds, 79 kilograms, over the course of the year. Well, that's great progress. To interject, congratulations. My confidence has skyrocketed, and I feel so much better about myself. I also inspired to get my teeth fixed after years of neglect. That's still a work in progress. Interjecting, I know where you're coming from there. It's a work in progress, but you're on the right track. Take my word for it. This is someone who's pretty much undergone every dental treatment known to man, practically. But you continue. That's one more insecurity that I'm trying to amend. And on top of that, I've got a dog who's also my work partner. He's a trained canine who gets to ride around with me all the time. He's a great worker and a great pet as well. All that to say, 2024 has been one of the best years of my life. I feel like my life is finally headed in the right direction, and I wish the same to anyone else who is in my position. I apologize if this was a lengthy response. I'm just happy to correspond with good news. Excited for the future of this podcast and wish you the best from Philip. Philip, thanks for writing in, and I really like that email. Obviously decisions happen and decisions are made, good or bad. Life can change for better or for worse, but to really read, especially what you said in one of your final remarks there, you said 2024 was one of the best years of my life. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, reading the journey that you were going through. And hopefully 2025 is just going to keep the good times coming. And who knows, 2025 might even be better. You're on the right track. The progress that you've made, as far as finding your life path, as far as taking care of your health and, making those changes that you're obviously seeing the positive results to, right? It speaks for itself, and you see the results, you see what your hard work has amounted to, so just stay the course, keep your head up, and I think you've really got it together. So very well done, Philip. It's a wonderful email to see, and I certainly wish you the very best of luck going forward. But, stuff like that, making a decision, and turns out it ended up being better than you ever could have thought possible. That makes me very happy to see. Sachin, and I hope I got the name right, over in New Delhi, India, checks in with a few thoughts. I know the question was about a single decision that had a significant impact on my life. I tried reflecting on it, and I couldn't pinpoint anything particularly dramatic or out of the ordinary, other from career and work-related choices that I'd made over the years. However, I do believe the small decisions I make every day, whether related to health, relationships, or work, collectively shape my life over time. It's the true power of compounding. So, one interesting decision I do recall, the one that led me here, was when I first searched for a review of the McDonald's Travis Scott meal back in 2020. That's actually how I discovered your channel. Nearly 4 years later, I've gone through most of your video catalog, especially the miscellaneous content, the unnamed drink review series, and every review from the past few years. Even though I'm a vegetarian and most of the items you review aren't available in my country, I truly enjoy your content, both videos and podcasts. So, looking back, I consider that search an important decision, one that led me to appreciate your work and ultimately write this response. I hope this adds to the show. Thanks again for everything, especially the podcasts. Well, thank you. Sash in New Delhi, India checks in. And, no, it's certainly still a decision that you made. And, you found this channel that I really appreciate your dedicated and devoted listenership and viewership to. Sounds like you've really been making your way through all the content, of which there has been a lot over the years. And, yes, the McDonald's Travis Scott meal. That was back in 2020 indeed. And if I'm not mistaken, Travis Scott, I could, it's been so many years, I could probably just say this at this point. It was the funniest thing having to do that review and pretend like, number one, I knew who Travis Scott was, and number two, pretend like I even cared that he had a meal with McDonald's. It's like, I don't even know who this guy is, and why do I care that they're selling an upcharged quarter pounder? Why? Because Travis Scott said that he eats it, so now you're supposed to go out of your way and buy it just because he said so? It's like, what on earth is that? It didn't even have any special branding, I don't think. And, I don't think it had any special packaging. I think it was just a quarter pounder and some fries and a drink and some barbecue sauce. And I think, and this might be the wrong one, but I think this is the one where they said that you got the drink with extra ice. Yeah, right. Because that's how Travis Scott likes it. So, you gotta go out and you gotta do everything because Travis Scott said so. Epitome of celebrity worship right there, if you ask me. Why, because Travis Scott, and how do you even know if that's what he actually likes, if he even eats McDonald's? It's like, yeah, because he said so. But anyway, the thing that was notable, so, obviously, people were genuinely excited for it. So imagine how much of a buzzkill it would have been if I sat there and gave that diatribe in the review. And, so I tried not to be too much of a downer. But the noteworthy thing about the Travis Scott meal from McDonald's is that it was the first major celebrity meal that was released. Now, that's not to say that those haven't been a thing before, because they most certainly have, but, for a while that sort of, that trend of celebrity endorsements and the like, as far as fast food is concerned, faded into obscurity, in a sense. And then it became a bit of a gimmick again, starting in 2020, and it continues to an extent to this day, although the hype has died down somewhat. But the first big one that sort of reinvigorated the trend was the Travis Scott meal. Because good old Travis Scott said that he likes his quarter pounder, so now you all have to go out and buy one, right? To be like Travis Scott. It's like, you think about that concept. I want to sit there and say, how stupid is this? But again, when I do the review, you have to do the song and dance and all of that. But, I was amazed, and it's like, I sometimes can get a feel for things, that there's certain subjects where I feel like the video is going to do well, no matter what, no matter my personal biases, no matter if I think that the video subject is as stupid as possible, which I did in this case. It's like, you could still get a sense, at least I can, that I think it's going to perform well. So I went out of my way, I got the Travis Scott meal, and sure enough it did. It got 3 million views. And I was amazed by that. And then they kept the trend going, where I think the next big meal was the J Balvin meal from McDonald's, and the reaction to that, and that still got considerable viewership, that got 500,000 views, also in 2020, but the reaction to that, I remember, was very different from the Travis Scott meal, which people seemed at least to be somewhat receptive to, whereas with the J Balvin meal, the majority of the reaction was, who the hell is J Balvin, And then over the years, there have been various collaborations with various chains, but, the huge celebrity releases, I think, have sort of died down. Well, let's look for the heck of it. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but what the heck, I don't think people really mind it much, so let's look. I'm curious. The last collaboration, the Angel Reese special from McDonald's. And this is another instance, I'll go right into this and say I have no idea who Angel Reese is. I've never heard of her before. I presume that she's some sort of athlete. That's all I know. And, so that was that. But, just the level of hype isn't really there anymore. It got 200,000 views, which is still perfectly fine, but it's like, doesn't get the millions of views that the original celebrity collaborations with McDonald's used to get, because people are just sort of tired of it, and it sort of became a gimmick. Now, granted, I also think it depends on the individual that's part of the collaboration, right? For instance, if McDonald's had a Taylor Swift meal, then the interest in that would be through the roof, simply because whether you like her music or not, it's indisputable that she is a worldwide superstar and has a huge, huge fan base. So that would be a hit no matter what. But it's like, the Angel Reese special. I have no idea who that is. And then going back a year, they had the Kerwin Frost box, which again was, like I said, I have no idea who Kerwin Frost is. Although that one, I think at least had good packaging, if I recall correctly. Although a lot of people just said it was very infantile, but I thought, well, people can say what they want, but at least they did good with the packaging, and they made it look nice, You've had other places that have tried to do the collaborations, but it never really, I don't know, it never goes as well unless it's McDonald's that does it. And even that, the last one before that, the Cardi B and Offset meal, 200,000 views, but again, a far cry from the millions that they would get, because again, the interest just isn't really there. I remember looking back now we're going to like 2022, I think, KFC's Jack Harlow meal. And all I remember from that one, now that one actually got more views than some of the McDonald's meals. But that one, all I remember is looking at the cup and seeing the comments, and people were saying that this guy looks like the sketch of the Unabomber on it. And I found that rather amusing. But I don't know, it's a gimmick, of which success is not guaranteed. Paul in Cincinnati, Ohio, in response to your new podcast question, I would say that in my life the most influential decision is my sobriety. I've been sober 13 years this coming March. I definitely think I'm alive today because of this life-changing and saving event. I spent close to 15 years abusing my body and causing my family and friends so much worry and pain. In closing, I hope to be celebrating 13 years of sobriety here soon, with many more years to come as long as I have to live. Looking forward to all of the listener responses on this episode. I'm also looking forward to catching another Wednesday evening rebroadcast of your program on Shortwave. I grew up with radio, mostly because my parents didn't want us sitting in front of a television. We only had a few occasions for television watching, mostly read books, listened to the radio, and played outdoors. Anyway, I hope you stay well and safe, and greatly appreciate all of your work with the podcast, the shortwave broadcasts, the food reviews. Keep up the great work. Ciao for now, Paul, in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's a lovely response right there, Paul. And congratulations. I imagine that must have been a really tough and difficult decision, to make and then to be able to stick to. It takes a remarkable amount of perseverance and determination and self-control to be able to see through it, especially for as long as you have. 13 years. Truly commendable, Paul. And I think what really, stuck out to me the most is the fact that you said, if I didn't make that decision, I might not even be here today to write this. My addiction might have gotten the better of me over these last 13 years, and that would have been that. So, really, my congratulations, Paul, and here's to many more years being clean and sober and having that control over your life, making the most of it, and living the life you want to live. Mike in New Jersey checks in with a few thoughts. Your question on a decision that I have made that ended up changing my life in a significant way, well, I'm sure this will require some deep thinking for anyone, myself included. Here is a very well thought out response on one small decision and the other a big decision. Although both should probably be classified as big decisions, I'll make the first one the smaller one because, to me, money isn't everything. 1. Back in 2019, I made a decision to invest a large sum of borrowed money in order to start my first business in clothing apparel for a fitness brand. Knowing that there is always a risk of failure when starting a business, I was all in on spending large sums of credit card money with intentions to repay everything while my business would go to thrive. So I made all the purchases on inventory needed to get everything going: website, merchandise, travel expenses, marketing material, etc. Everything went well when I was promoting my business on local street fairs, flea markets, at a major expo in Los Angeles. Then, the plandemic happened in March of 2020, and that's where everything came to a full stop. All the street fairs were closed and cancelled, and no one was able to see my product, hence the failure of my business. And this was due to not being able to show the public my merch, impacting my life today with so much debt, lawsuits, living check to check, to this misfortune of mine. So to interject with the first one, and I understand the animosity there. It was a situation that, you had no control over, though, and that's the thing. We didn't have a crystal ball. We didn't know what was going to happen in 2020 and how they were going to handle it, and, what resulted from that. Back in 2019, everything was looking great. The future looked bright. And, when you started it up, obviously things seemed good. I mean, imagine when you first started the business back in 2019, someone going up to you and telling you what was going to happen in 2020 would be like, what are you on? What are you smoking exactly? Sounds ridiculous. But things happened as they did, regrettably, and, I'm sorry you still have to deal with that to this day. Now, number 2, probably the biggest decision that I made that is also impacting my life to this day would have to be a surgical procedure that I decided to decline due to the scams of the health insurance industry. I've had issues with my left shoulder since I was 13 years old from a volleyball accident. Now I'm 45, and those minor injuries have finally caught up with my physical abilities, even when working out at the gym, without having to type so much more by giving you all the physical details of my injury. Basically, I am limited with certain motions that I can do with my left arm. I could still use my left arm with many things, but if I ever make the wrong motion, well, then the pain kicks in. Now, here's where the scam comes in. My insurance company denied me the surgical procedure the morning I was scheduled to have my surgery. Reason being is that in order to be approved, I needed to do several weeks of physical therapy. My doctor, who was also my surgeon for doing the procedure on my shoulder, specifically told me physical therapy is not needed because it would be a waste of time since nothing else can fix me other than the surgical procedure that we were planning to do. Go figure. Right away, I understood that the health insurance company is trying to get more money out of me so I can get an approval for the surgery. Unbelievable. How scummy the health insurance business is for a person in need of better health to go through. So I decided I'll no longer fall for the tricks in this business that try to get money from someone who just got screwed from his failed business and then physically falling apart, because as we all know, life happens, and I'll live with this for as much as I physically can. Anyway, John, I'm sure you understand my situation since you yourself have had health issues to deal with. I pray you're well. I know you're a good man with good intentions, and I thank God for the blessings of having people like you in this world to get people like me through the day with your over 10 years of entertaining us. Thank you for all that you do, your friend in New Jersey, Mike. Mike, thank you for writing in, and, people that hear about this, they'll obviously see it how they see it, but reading this firsthand, I certainly understand the sentiment you have and why you have it. And I think unbelievable indeed, sums it up quite nicely. And I'm sorry that things fell through in that regard, and I'm sorry you have to deal with, both as far as what happened business-wise, as well now physically, how things are in that regard, and hopefully there will be better days ahead, but at the same time, I know how life is, and that's never necessarily a guaranteed, but, just take it day by day, one day at a time, and as I'm sure you understand, when especially life is how it is, and you get these rough streaks, and things just don't look all that great, don't lose sight of the small things, sometimes that's all that we've got left in life, sometimes, and sometimes it's the only things left to even give us the motivation to just go on one day to the next. Sometimes even just the small things. They can have a much bigger impact than one may ever realize. It's just my opinion. And yes, physically I've had my issues to deal with. It's like, I talk about the fall that I had and everything. I generally talk about that from the aspect that, in the moment when it happened. But, that fall messed me up permanently. It's left me permanently injured when, and I remember when I was in the hospital, the doctors there gave me this whole laundry list based on what I did to myself of things that essentially are complications therefrom. And the problem was, I was sort of in shock, and I was having trouble focusing on everything, and I remembered as much as I could, and, tried to note down whatever, but, how it is sometimes after you get an injury, and beforehand you've always healed well enough, right? You've always recovered well enough, and you mistakenly think that this time isn't going to be very, very different from that. And that was the mistake that I made. I thought to myself, well, I was bedridden for a bit, and then I was able to start walking again with pain and slowly, get back to speed. I thought, though, that things were going to keep getting better because the healing process was obviously well underway, but the way that it is sometimes, then it just gets to a point where, that's it. And your body can only do so much after that point. And then after that, what's done is done, and, you're changed after that point, and there's nothing else you could really do about it. And that's how it's been in my case. I realized that the hard way, because before I fell, and before I ended up hitting my back and all of that real good, I really enjoyed taking long night walks. That was my primary means of getting out and about and enjoying recreation. And even up into 2019, there were times when, I had all these routes planned and everything, and I would bring my shortwave radio with me, and I would sometimes just walk through the night. I would start off maybe at like 1:30, 2 a.m. Sometimes I would go till 4, and I could cover a good, 4 miles. There were all these little walking paths and trails, and when I say that, don't think that I was walking around, on some dark hiking trail in the woods or anything like that. These were well-maintained, well-lit paths, but, it was just nice to enjoy these areas, free of the hustle and bustle of the daytime, and take in the sights and appreciate the night and the night air, and, if you're a night person, you get it. If you like the solitude, you get it. But it was also the way that I would stay in shape. And like I said, there were nights where, at a minimum, I would do 2 miles. But there were many nights, especially, I was actually working my way up to doing more. I would cover 4 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles. And I was getting around. Well, then the fall happened. But like I said, I thought that the healing process was just going to be linear. And I learned, in my case, that it wasn't, the hard way, when I started trying to get back into my night walks, and after going maybe a half mile to a mile, something just didn't feel right. And it was very hard to explain because it was a feeling whereupon I'd never felt before, but I could immediately tell, no, something isn't right here. And it was like my lower back, and it was like my central back, but especially my lower back, tailbone, and right hip started locking up, for lack of a better word. They started getting very stiff. Then the immense pain followed, and then it was like, well, I could just sort of for the most part, just have to sit and remain stationary for a while, and then call it a night and hobble off, and that's that. And at first I thought, this is really weird. I obviously knew immediately it was some complication from having been rattled around, but I thought that was going to go away, and it never did. So, now it's like, I can't. Now, I'm glad I was never some athlete or anything, because then, that really would have messed me up, but, yeah, my abilities are, restricted heavily in that regard. So, nowadays, I could still walk, don't get me wrong. Around the house, I can do so without incident, although there's constant pain that I deal with, but, you just get used to it, and then you eventually ignore it if it's not too strong and it doesn't get in the way of things. But, it's like if I do walks, then I could probably do a mile at most, and even that's pushing it, because even after doing a mile, once I start heading back and I'm sort of near my destination, I already feel it locking up, and I have to decrease my speed and, sometimes even stop for a bit. So it's like, Yeah, well, what can you do? I'm just thankful that I could still at least enjoy a walk to some extent. Although granted, I haven't really been able to do much as far as walking is concerned either. The last time I tried, I ended up getting a panic attack and came close to forgetting where I even was, which is just an embarrassment. And after that, I just threw in the towel, but, try to get back into it at some point. Interesting email and thoughts. Oh, this is a very charged email right here. I don't necessarily want to read it. I don't want to get in any trouble, but boy, this guy really feels strongly about KFC and is saying that I should go protest outside KFC. And then expressing his personal feelings, this guy is wishing death upon all the workers at KFC. I guess just all of them, just in general, at every KFC. So, I don't know what KFC did to you for you to feel that strongly against them. Quite frankly, I don't want to know. But, very strong opinions there. I don't think I'm the one, though. I don't think I'm the one for you to lead your crusade, essentially, so I would recommend asking elsewhere. Logan in South America writes, "My change is deeply personal, but I hope it reaches someone out there who needs to hear it. Since I was born, I've always been a lonely person. I've had no siblings, and throughout my life, very few friends. That loneliness used to feel like an empty space I constantly tried to fill with relationships, romantic, platonic, any kind, but when those connections ended or drifted away, I would feel devastated, like I had lost a part of myself. The real turning point for me was learning to embrace my own company, to find peace in solitude instead of fearing it. I realized that if I couldn't enjoy being with myself, why would I expect others to? Once that shift happened in my mind, my life slowly got better, not because of someone else, but because I had found contentment within myself and being my own companion. It wasn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but choosing to embrace your loneliness sometimes instead of running from it was one of the best things I ever did." A very interesting email there. Thank you for writing in. So this email, it's an interesting one, and I suppose it just comes down to how you really see it. So I'm sure there will be some folks listening in that'll see this and they'll think, this strategy makes sense, and then there will be other folks listening in that'll think, nah, this really isn't for me. But the perspective is interesting, nevertheless. So, CV writes in and says, "A small decision that ended up changing my life was to actually be petty and take almost everything personally. I know that sounds strange and makes me out to be an incredibly miserable person, but it was a surprisingly good motivator. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but I could honestly say that there are some goals that I wouldn't have achieved had there not been someone I was going to be able to point and laugh at while claiming that I had achieved some kind of victory over. The most notable example of this helping me is when I had to graduate high school a year early. I don't have the time to explain why I had to graduate early, but I will explain the circumstances in which I did so. I had found out I had to graduate early about halfway into my junior year, meaning I had to do my senior year online while doing the rest of my junior year in person. To access the online courses, I had to see my counselor and get put in the classes since I was late to sign up. While doing it, I would routinely have to see this counselor since she was a moron and had made so many errors along the way, and she even forgot to put me into one of the classes, making me fall further behind schedule. After one of these meetings, I had overheard the other counselors gossiping about me on the way out. They said I'd never be able to do it and it was all a fool's errand. This enraged me, since half the reason that my task was near impossible was the fact that they were so incompetent, so I took every word to heart, and for the next few months spent every moment of free time I had doing my senior courses. I was able to complete them in time because I was so desperate to prove them wrong and get some kind of win out of the situation. A similar situation happened later when I was applying to universities with only a month to spare. Luckily, this also worked out. Maybe I should have focused on time management instead of vindictiveness. Sorry if this message was a bit long. Anyway, thank you for reading, and hope you have a nice day from CV. Thank you, CV. Yeah, some interesting perspective there, and again, I think folks will see it as they see it, but it's fascinating that approach works well for you, you know? We hear next from Eric, who says, "A decision that significantly impacted my life was when I decided to come to Chicago for college. I was choosing between a school in Chicago and a school in New York City. I'm glad I went with Chicago because, in the past 4 years, I've met so many amazing people in this city, and Chicago's rent is comparatively cheaper than that of New York City as well. Keep up the good work, John. Regards from Eric." Thank you, Eric. And the rent situation certainly makes total sense to me, and of course, the cost of living these days is outright insane in many cases, and doesn't seem to be getting any better, so certainly going with what is best on the wallet is a very reasonable choice, of course. But I'm also glad that the most financially advantageous option seems to have been one with many other benefits as well, and I'm glad that you met some good folks over there in Chicago as well, and I'm happy that the city is working out nicely for you. Alvaro writes, "I could think of 3 times when I had to make a decision that probably changed the course of my life. The first I can think of is when I met my now wife. She was living in another country, and it was a very uncertain relationship in that sense. I remember battling with myself if or not to take a step towards the relationship. Well, now we are married and have 2 kids and a beautiful home. The second decision was to restart and finish my degree in psychology, which I did. Now I'm working as a clinical psychologist since 2016, and it's been amazing. And third was to restart my chess career, which I did after 15 years of absence, and that has been very fulfilling for me. These are the greatest decisions in my life. Thanks for an interesting podcast from Alvaro." Thank you, Alvaro. And it makes me happy to see that these 3 decisions all worked out for the best. And even though you had those initial doubts, I suppose, initial uncertainties, right, in regards to the relationship, it sounds to me anyway like you made the right choice. You decided to go ahead and close the gap, and now you have a great place to live, what sounds like a good relationship, and a family at that. And finishing the career, of course. Now you have a nice job as well, and I hope likewise that your endeavors in the world of chess have been enjoyable and fulfilling likewise. This email comes in from Eduardo, who said, "Thank you for reading my answer in your last podcast," and to interject, my pleasure, and happy to read your answer for this question in this podcast. You continue, "I will try to draw something for the show. I'm attaching a picture of the radio I use mostly when working at night, other than the XH Data or Kudozen. This is a picture of my Kenwood Model R600 receiver. It's quite old and has some issues, but it works, and I actually am familiar with those communications receivers, I think they call them. I just have the standard portable radios myself, but I've heard that those Kenwood receivers can be a nice tabletop radio as well. And I see in the picture you have it tuned into 4840 kilohertz, so that's a nice touch, if I may add. And you're right, a response to the question regarding a decision that changed my life, I left a toxic relationship after 15 years of marriage. I then found my current wife. As fate has it, she is now sick with stage 5 chronic kidney disease, CKD. Still, we are so happy together, and I don't regret falling in love with her for a split second. I would do it all over again. Life is beautiful, and I hope to share it with her until the end. I wholeheartedly say in conclusion, never settle for anyone who doesn't value you as a person. Love is hard to find, but not impossible. Thank you from Eduardo. And thank you, Eduardo, for writing in and for sharing that. I personally find that very touching, and I'm very sad to hear, about how obviously fate and how life is sometimes, but at the same time, I think you really said it beautifully, that despite the way things may be, as far as health is concerned, you found the right person for you, and no matter what, you're happy, and you're going to enjoy every second together, and it's very touching, and I think that was very well said, that you said at the end there as well, to sum things up. And I hope, I know that as far as illnesses are concerned and various prognoses and timelines and all of that, I know they can be variable, but no matter how things look, I hope that you and yours are able to have plenty more time together and are able to make the very most of it too. So thank you, Eduardo, for writing in. And if you would like, of course, to submit any drawings or anything for the broadcast, you're welcome to do so. Don't hesitate. And I appreciate the picture as well, and it's nice to have you locked in on 4840 kilohertz. Likewise. We hear from Zach, who writes, 2 big decisions that changed my life. I'll go with one from the past and one more recent. Talking less and doing more. Back in high school, I participated in a week-long activity where we were divided into groups, almost like a scout camp. I remember trying really hard to impress my instructor, talking a lot, actively participating, making sure I stood out. At the end of the week, they picked the top performer, and to my surprise, they chose someone who had been extremely quiet the entire time. You could barely notice him. I was really disappointed, but that moment changed how I approached things. Since then, I've become much quieter, and I've realized this strategy actually works well. When you don't talk much, people don't expect a lot, but when you perform, it creates a wow effect of sorts. I applied this approach through school, university, and now in my career, it has truly defined me. And secondly, relocating from Israel to Dublin, Ireland. This move involved a lot, changing my career path, leaving family and friends behind, and adapting to a new country. Financially, it worked out. I even bought an apartment recently, interjecting. Congratulations on that. It's a big move. But you say, it hasn't been easy. I left a job I really liked, and now I feel a bit stuck in the grind of working for a big U.S. corporate company, which can be draining. Still, living and working in Europe has been a great adventure. It's a huge change, but one that has shaped my life in ways I'm still figuring out. So, those are the 2 decisions that come to mind. Sure, there's others, but those stand out the most. Thanks again for the great content from Zach. Thank you, Zach. And I thought the name looked familiar, and then when you mentioned Israel, I thought that is who because I remember you used to be a listener to the broadcast, the Shortwave broadcast back in, I think, 2018 or so. And I remember you'd send in some reception reports from time to time, and when I saw it, and I thought, oh, that is the person that I was thinking of there. So now reporting in from Dublin, Ireland. And it's a fascinating approach that you mentioned as well in regards to essentially speaking less and doing more. An unconventional one, but, I can see how that can be effective. And again, it's like you sort of go unnoticed, but then if you go ahead and do something, the results are sort of they'll do all the talking for you. And it's a very interesting strategy, evidently, though it has done you well. So thank you, Zach. Good to hear from you. Amy in Vancouver, Washington writes, 19 years ago, I made the decision to become a counselor when I knew in my heart I wanted to be a teacher. I was a counselor for 15 years and was pretty miserable in the profession. Then I took a 2-year break to substitute teach, and I absolutely loved it. I'm now back to counseling due to financial reasons, and I'm once again unhappy. I miss the time I spent as a substitute teacher, and often find myself daydreaming about all the good times I had, in particular, spent teaching kindergarten. I've considered all the pros and cons, and it just keeps coming back to the money. Wish I didn't have so many financial responsibilities. If it was just myself I had to take care of, I'd be quite comfortable on a teacher's salary. Oh well, such is life. Trying to hang in there and practice daily gratitude. Respectfully, Amy from Vancouver, Washington. Well, thank you for your response, Amy. And I'm sorry to hear about how things are as far as the career path is concerned. In regards, of course, like you said, it comes down to the money, and I think a lot of people can understand and agree with that sentiment, where one of the biggest constraints a lot of the time from preventing many a person from doing what they want to do with their life and time versus what they have to do is the money. What pays the bills, what keeps a roof over your head, what gets food on the table, etc. And sometimes it's the unfortunate reality of things. One thing, at least in your case, is that at least you're able to see, right, what that calling really was. Like in my case, if it weren't for this YouTube channel and these broadcasts and all of that, I'd still be at a total loss. I'd just be sitting here completely clueless, as I have been for years and years. At least it's like, you have something in life that it's like, if you could, this is definitely what I would be doing. And you verified that when you're able to do the substitute teaching, and that solidified it. I know this sounds cliched, and I know, these sorts of platitudes often can get a bit stale, but it doesn't mean that there isn't any truth to them. And that's, well, you never know what the future holds. Right now, things look as they are, and look as they do, but life is full of surprises. Like I said, I know these are all just cliched, overused phrases, but there's truth to them. Life is still full of surprises. I know there's bad surprises out there, but there can be good ones too. So, just hang in there, and look, a couple years from now, you never know. You just never know what the future holds, but just keep your head up, and like I said, you never know what's down the line. So thank you, Amy, for your thoughts on the program, decision that made an impact. I thought this was an interesting email, and it comes in from an anonymous listener. On to the question for today. The decision that significantly changed my life happened when I was just 8 years old. Like any other day, I was browsing the children's section of my local library when I peered into a nearby room where a dozen or more men and boys were playing chess. Nervously, I decided to enter the room to observe. Eventually, I was noticed by one of the coaches, and they asked me to join them. I was quite apprehensive, as there were no other girls involved, and I felt quite out of place. Luckily, the coach was very kind and encouraged me to join everyone. I had no idea that this would be the moment that set in motion the next decade of my life. I ended up going to this chess club every week, just for fun, which led to eventually getting a chess coach and competing in local tournaments. Soon, chess became my intense passion and hobby. Eventually, at age 12, I competed in my first World Qualifier tournament and ended up qualifying for the World Youth Chess Championships overseas. I couldn't believe I was actually competing in a world tournament. The following year, I competed in another world chess tournament in the United Arab Emirates, where I also gained unforgettable life experiences such as visiting the Burj Khalifa. Standing at the bottom of that thing and looking up is terrifying, meeting many camels, and being in the presence of children from almost 100 different countries, all united over the game of chess. It's there I learned that, in many ways, chess is a universal language. I lived and breathed chess for my entire teenage years. As a female chess player, it was and is somewhat an anomaly to see women in chess. I gained some attention online as I documented my chess journey, and ended up in some newspapers locally and internationally. Television interviews being labeled as a chess prodigy, which I find rather hilarious. I never saw myself like that. Honestly, I barely paid attention to any of this. All I cared about was the game. I ended up with a wonderful sponsor, who sponsored me for 6 months, where I played chess internationally in countless tournaments and trained with grandmasters. During this time, I apparently became somewhat good at chess, defeating international masters. My longest chess game lasted 6 hours without breaks. I didn't even notice that everyone around me had already left the tournament hall. The poor arbiter was the only one left, probably desperate for one of our clocks to run out of time. These experiences are some of the best moments in my life, memories I will cherish forever. Since many people helped me along the way, I tried my best to give back to my community and international communities by hosting fundraising events for many charities. I'm forever grateful for all my supporters. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like without chess. If I never entered that room as an 8-year-old, I couldn't even imagine. I'm very glad I had the courage. It was a decision that changed my life. And I have a question for you. Do you play chess, and have you seen the show Queen's Gambit? Thanks for reading this. I know it's a bit lengthy. Take care, from an anonymous listener. Well, thank you so much for your response, and what an amazing one that is. And if I may, I personally give you my sincere compliments and congratulations on all that you've achieved in life. That is quite the skill to have, really something remarkable and something to be very proud of. And I also want to say good on you for cultivating essentially some of that following that you have, and utilized it to be able to support various charities as well and host some of those fundraising events. But really, what a response that is, and I think that really just captures the whole essence of the question. You know, when it comes back to that singular decision, going all those years back to when you were an 8-year-old, right, purely by coincidence, you happened to be there in the library, you happened, just for the sake of curiosity, to look in that nearby room, you know, and see those folks playing and practicing chess, and then, you know, extending that curiosity to venture in, see what it's all about, and it turns out, you know, what might have been just a mundane, ordinary action of simply just going in there and seeing what's going on, happened to actually be one of the most defining moments, really, of your life. How remarkable that is. And obviously when you went in, you had no idea where this was going to go. And like I said earlier, you never know what the future holds. You just don't know. You never knew going in that it was going to amount to what it actually ended up getting to, and that you would become quite the accomplished and recognized chess player. You had no clue going in. So, you know, it's just a good illustration. You just never know what the future holds. You know, like in my case, when I started the YouTube channel, I had no idea. I thought no one was going to watch this stuff. I even had an idea planned for how I was going to end the series, you know, in a couple months initially. But, you know, in my case, once I started doing it, I realized, well, you know, I like being here on the camera. It's my own little show, and I kept it up because I genuinely enjoyed doing it, and but it was never with any expectation that it was ever going to get any attention or recognition, or that I would be here 14 years later still doing it as a livelihood at that. So, like I said, you just never know what the future holds. Perfect example of that. And thank you for taking the time to share that. I have not seen the show Queen's Gambit, although I do know it does deal with chess, and I know it popularized chess with many. It at least brought the concepts, I believe, of the game and some of its technicalities to, a more popular sphere where some people started getting interested in it, if my understanding is correct. But do I play chess? Yes, I do. And I doubt that would necessarily come as much of a surprise, but I do play chess. Although I don't play competitively, I simply play, on my own, just against the computer. And it's just something that I'll do in my free time. My own abilities at the game are nothing to be proud of, but I play because I enjoy it, and I have fun doing so. And I will say, over the years, I have gotten better at it, and, I am familiar with various moves and, openings and things you can do that could certainly advance your position, and certain courses of action you could take that could definitely tip the scales in your favor, so to speak. But granted, there are plenty of games I'll play that I'll win, plenty of games that I'll get a draw, and a number that I'll lose as well. So it's not like I sit here and win everything, but I really just play it for the sake of enjoyment. But I enjoy playing chess. It's fun, and like I said, in my case, I play it more casually, just as something to do. If I just want to kill some time, I'll play a couple games, and I'm just in it for the fun of it, really, in my case. So I'm more of a casual player, but yes, I'm familiar with chess. I've been familiar with it for a long time. I learned how to play chess probably as a child myself. I wouldn't even be surprised if I was around the same age, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I learned how to play chess with my father, who's a chess player, but again, he himself is mostly similar to me, just a casual player of the game. He appreciates it, but just does it for the fun of it. But he had a physical chessboard, and especially, and I don't know if this is the same nowadays when everything is online, but for me as a kid, being able to physically see the chess pieces and being able to get the feel for things, and examine what each piece looks like, and, I just thought that was cool, but it also helped me understand, the rules and purpose thereof and all of that much easier than just looking at icons, on a computer screen, being able to physically see that element and do that. But anyway, that's my story. Nowadays, though, I don't, like I said, I play it online, and I just go up against the computer. I never play against anyone, it's just always against the computer, but that's good enough for me. Good question there, and like I said, an excellent response. Thank you for taking the time to write that. It's sincerely appreciated. Now we hear from another anonymous listener, getting a little tongue-tied. For your sake, and you know who you are, and when I say that, I know it sounds bad, it's not, but I want you to understand I might get the name completely wrong here for what it is you'll be discussing, and just understand that there's no insult intended. And if I make a fool out of myself doing this, that's all that there is to it. So, just understand. But you're right. Hello, Report of the Week. Hope you're doing well. The decision that changed my life was rather an incidental one. But first, I will provide some background that will help picture what my life is, or rather was. A major event happened in 2018 that changed my life. It was a significant downfall that left me with no purpose or meaning to live. But nonetheless, I kept going. I still had a void inside myself, day after day, the same routine, the same struggle. After many years, I got used to trying to numb myself with entertainment. Each year, I tried something different. And back in 2023, I decided, for 2024, I was going to play video games. And so I went. I'm familiar with video games. I played a lot of them in my childhood. Great memories I still have. But once you grow up, life happens, and suddenly you have responsibilities and no time to enjoy things you once did when you were a kid. But anyway, I decided to go very specific on my 2024 video game journey. You see, and quickly interjecting, this is where the pronunciation thing gets into play. You see, the platformer genre of video games has a subgenre called Metroidvania. For those who aren't familiar with the term, and it could be pronounced Metroidvania, but I'm going to go with the Vania approach. You do say, though, for those who aren't familiar with the term, it's a subgenre that involves exploration, progress gated by abilities you have to find, and an interconnected map to explore and discover secrets. I always had a love for Metroidvanias, so I went through and played as many of them as I could in 2024. As a result, I finished 28 games. I loved it so much that something sparked inside me at that time. I had this strong motivation to build something out of this experience. So as for today, I'm making my own Metroidvania game by myself. I'm doing the art, the code, and the narrative. It's really not easy being a solo developer, and being a perfectionist myself only means that this game won't see the light of day for a long time. But I'm happy. I have something to do, something that gives meaning to my life. And as long as I have this light inside me, I know I'll be alright. I love this show, you're great, and I wish you my wholehearted best regards. So thank you so much, anonymous listener, and I love that second to last sentence that you wrote there in regards to how you feel, with the process, now that not only were you, of course, did you go into this just looking for something to do, but you found this calling, and all of a sudden you decided, you know what, I'm going to make something of this, and I'm actually going to actively contribute myself to the subgenre and make one of my own. And like I said, that second to last sentence, it's beautiful, really. It might take a while, but I'm happy. I have something to do. It gives my life meaning. And it gives this light inside me that as long as I have that, I know I'll be alright. Beautifully said. I love that sentiment. And I sincerely wish you the best with your endeavor there. And I really hope everything goes, no matter how long or short the process takes, I hope everything ends up being exactly as you envisioned it, and more. And if you release it and it gets out there, I hope many people eventually are able to see it, and it's able to have an impact on countless individuals all over the world. So that was a wonderful email right there. Chris in Ohio checks in. I struggled a lot with this latest topic. I've made some decent decisions in my life, and some that were frankly terrible. Many of both types are ones that I'm just not comfortable sharing, interjecting. Completely understandable. That's why when I gave this prompt, you write what you want to write. That's what it's all about. Now back to your email, you say, maybe because in hindsight I feel I could have and should have worked much harder on the choices I've made. I'm not trying to be a downer here, but just reflective of how I've come to feel at age 66, when most of my life seems to be only visible in the rearview mirror. Moreover, it seems to me so many of everybody's decisions turn out to be mainly messy, vague, or don't seem to make much difference to anything. Recounting those kinds of decisions wouldn't really make for dramatic emails, I suspect. But I finally came up with one decision I made a few years ago that makes me feel good, and I don't mind sharing. This is not a joke, not sarcasm. It was my decision after randomly watching a YouTube food review of yours, chiefly because I wondered who this weird kid in the suit was, and then shortly thereafter deciding to subscribe and catch up with all of your internet content. To my surprise, I quickly came to realize that you, in fact, are one of the most, you're too kind, one of the most polite, intelligent, empathetic, civilized, and decent young men anyone could ever want to know. You can make talking about eating a hamburger an eloquent exercise in critical thinking. You made me care about the future of shortwave radio, even though I don't hardly ever listen to radio. Listening to you has made my life better and certainly more pleasurable. Thank you for being you, from Chris in Ohio. Well, Chris, I thank you. I really do. I thank you for writing that email, for your compliments, for your thoughts. I think you're too kind, but it means a lot that you feel that way. And I just want you to know that this channel and these broadcasts and this podcast, it wouldn't be the same if it weren't for people like you out there listening and viewing. You know, none of this would be the same if it weren't for the wonderful viewing and listening audience all around the world that tunes in and listens in and watches and corresponds, be that frequently or infrequently. It wouldn't be the same without the good folks like you out there. So, Chris, thank you for all that you do. And that was a very nice email. I really appreciate you sending that. Chris in Ohio checking in. This next email comes in from Carolyn, and it's a serious subject, but at the same time, I think it has an important message to it, and it ends on a good note, too, and it's definitely worth sharing. So, it reads, "To answer your question, my story is an example of how good things can come out of our darkest moments. Indeed, the best decision that I took in my life actually started with a very bad one. It happened in February 2003, when I was nearly 21. I was involved in a pre-university program in social science. The school system in Quebec is different from the rest of Canada and the United States, not knowing where it would lead me. At the time, I was in my very first and very last relationship. In the summer of 2002, I had been approached online, in retrospect, I would say groomed, by an older man who appeared very charming and very caring. He showered me with compliments, made me feel special, understood, said things like, "You're so mature for your age," and I was so naive and vulnerable, and my self-esteem was so low, that I thought it was the only chance I would ever have to find love, and I took it. But it soon took a bad turn. I was manipulated, abused verbally, psychologically, emotionally, and financially, and I was isolated from my family and friends. One day, I went with him to the employment center, and as I was waiting while he was at his appointment, I saw a book on a shelf about the occupations with the best outlook for the future. Intrigued, I took the book, and as I looked through it, I saw one occupation that piqued my curiosity: a translator. As I was reading about it, I felt my enthusiasm growing. It had a lot of benefits that resonated with me. This profession could allow me to work from home, be my own boss if I chose to be self-employed, earn a good salary, have flexible hours, work in a wide variety of fields, from aerospace to school manuals, and translators were in high demand. That's it, I thought. I'm going to be a translator. Being fluent in both French and English, I had previously considered this profession, but I quickly dismissed the idea, as I thought that translation software would one day become so sophisticated that translators would no longer be required. I was wrong, so I decided to enroll at Université Laval in Quebec City to pursue a bachelor's degree in translation. This was a great time of my life. After I graduated, I found a job as a translator in a translation agency for which I had been working for nearly 16 years now. My work consists in translating documents from English to French, mainly for the city of Ottawa, including captions for videos that were posted on YouTube. Even though it can be downright boring at times, my work is very diverse. It allows me to learn a lot about the inner workings of a major city, and it's very rewarding. One funny question I got a few times about my job is, "Oh, that's cool, so you're doing voices in movies and cartoons, like The Simpsons? Or, are you going to translate for Putin?" No, that's the interpreter's job. Besides, I don't speak Russian. Yet. Lastly, I would like to say to the listeners that are going through dark times, don't despair, keep on hoping. Eventually you will see the light, it will get better, trust me. Something good will come out of these difficult times, and if you find yourself in a situation like I went through, if a person is constantly belittling you, making you feel guilty, unhappy, unsafe, getting angry at you, hitting you, forcing you to do things you don't want to do, please choose your well-being and safety and leave. This is not love. There's help for you if needed. And that's all that I have for you. So thank you from Carolyn checking in. And I think an extremely important message that you included at the end there, you couldn't have said it better, and that's a message that I certainly am a strong proponent of getting out. And, at the same time, it's amazing, like you said, how being in what initially was a very bad situation, you were able to inadvertently follow your calling in life, and through that you were actually able to achieve long-term happiness. And I think that's remarkable. So, very commendable journey. And, having the insight, to look back and, you look at life, the good decisions, the bad decisions, are the mistakes we've made as well as our respective successes. And, to learn from that and also utilize that to, again, share what I think is just an extremely important message for any listeners out there who might be in a similar circumstance. Very, very important words there. So thank you for sharing that. And this last email, it's also a serious one, but again, it has a message to it that's important. And another message that I think is worth getting out there. And it's on, a similar note as far as relationships are concerned. C.R. Fox writes in and says, "Congratulations on another year with your YouTube channel, podcast, and radio show. I found your channel in 2017 and have listened to every podcast and watched every video since. Thank you for providing literally hundreds of hours of calming and entertaining videos and podcasts to keep me company when I'm down. In response to your question about a big or small decision that changed my life. A few years ago, I was in a romantic relationship with a person I was simply not compatible with. But through a series of events and issues with not being able to prioritize my own well-being, I ended up with this person for 5 years. I was deeply unhappy and continuously just told myself, I'm just being dramatic. I need to figure out how to make this relationship work for me, because it seems to be working for them. As I believe happened for many people in the world during 2020, well, the pandemic became a breaking point for the relationship. I finally decided to end the relationship and restart my life. And in the years since, my life has improved immeasurably, and I feel I've finally recentered myself and learned again to trust myself after a long time in a relationship that always called my instincts into question. But it's important to acknowledge that my life was not instantly better after that breakup. It took months for me to get what I would consider some semblance of normal. My life wasn't better just because of that big choice I made. You see, that choice was the first in a cascading sequence of other choices that all contributed to my well-being. Not only did I leave that relationship, I went to therapy for a couple years. I began a journey of understanding my own unique brand of spirituality. I put in effort to make new friends and try new things. I revisited old interests I had forgotten about and rediscovered parts of myself that I thought were long forgotten. I would argue that most big decisions are actually small decisions. They're just the perfect decisions to begin longer periods of great change within our lives. That's a great way of looking at it, actually, interjecting. I continue. I'd like to share with your listeners a couple things I learned in my experiences that I hope others can internalize more quickly than I did. 1. Building a peaceful life starts with you. You have to put your well-being first and cultivate a healthy life before you can ever have enough energy to significantly contribute to the well-being of others. You can't pour from an empty cup. And point 2. Therapy can be scary, but it's worth it. Even if you have to take the time to try out a few different therapists before you find one who matches your style, believe me, it's worth it. If you have the money or good enough insurance, I can't stress enough the positive impact that good counsel can have on your life and how you take care of yourself. Apologies for the long email. I just had a lot of thoughts run through my mind with this question, and thank you for giving the opportunity to share. Stay safe out there. CR Fox, checking in. And again, I think another great email with some great advice in there as well. And some great thoughts about therapy too. I think, it's one of those things that some people will look at, they'll think, oh, no one actually needs this. Oh, this one, I had a bad experience with it and it didn't work for me. But like you said, there's more to it than that. And sometimes, and I would wager this is probably the case when it comes down to many different things, be that various doctors or even just products or services, right? Sometimes the first thing that you try out isn't always the best. It's just the first. And, then if something just isn't working for you, you can try something different and keep going from there. Because like you said, if you find the right one, the results can truly be invaluable and life-changing in the best of ways. So, thank you for sharing that. I think there were some great responses for this program. I know a lot of them were deeper. A lot of them were very, very personal. And what I really appreciate, especially with some of the recent emails, is the fact that not only was the experience and the decision-making behind it shared, but you gave some advice for listeners who might be in a similar situation. And for those of you that did that, I can't thank you enough for doing that. And I hope that those messages reached some people that maybe really needed to hear them. And sometimes, even just typing something like that up and throwing that perspective and that insight out there, in my opinion anyway, I think it could have a bigger impact than you'll ever know, even if it's just on people that you'll never know or see or meet or even know of. It'll have an impact, and I thank those of you that did that for taking the time to do that, because I truly believe it will have an impact, and a good impact at that. And in this world that we live in, the way a lot of things are, the way when you look at society and you see everything around us, it's any change for the better, I think, big or small, is sorely needed these days. So I really do thank those of you who imparted those thoughts for including them. And that concludes this program for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you found it to be an enjoyable show. And remember, the next show I hope to get out... See, at this point, I'm just saying sometime in April, so I'm just trying to cover myself. I mean, hopefully it'll be earlier in the month, but take it with a grain of salt, right? Hopefully. But the next program to follow, of course, will be a random show, a good old mailbag show. So if there's anything that you want to talk about, any questions that you have, if you want to talk about weather, you want to talk about tornadoes, you want to talk about things going on in the world, you want to talk about radio stuff, you want to talk about something interesting you read, you want to talk about clothes or food or aliens or cosmology, if you want to talk about the recent breakthrough or discovery, or at least a theory about, what they call dark energy, right? Make of that what you will. If you want to share your thoughts on compressed air, or lapel pins, or sleep schedules, or candles, or anything, I don't care. Ask or talk about whatever you want. Send in an email, VORWINFO@gmail.com. I would just say I don't want to really put a definitive deadline to anything, because like I said, I can't put a deadline on myself these days, but what I would recommend would be try to get it sent, a response sent, I'd say during the week in April, the week of the 13th, so between Sunday, April 13th, to Saturday, April 19th. I would say aim for that to be the latest, to send in a random email if you'd like. That'll just give me some time to crack away at it. The more the merrier, so you could keep it long or short, totally up to you. Take whatever style or approach you so choose. And like I said, that week I think will be a good cutoff point, because that'll give me some time to put everything together, record when I'm able to, and then edit thusly. So I think that'll work out the best. And again, you could send in an email to VORWINFO@gmail.com. Remember what I said at the beginning as well, with the shortwave. Some of the times have changed. The broadcast on 17.810 kilohertz, which is doing great. It's getting great response from listeners in Europe. It's like a de facto European service as well, which was never even my intention, but it's great to see. It really reaches especially Eastern Europe, particularly areas like Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, European Russia. Excellent reception constantly over there. It's almost on par with the broadcast I had back in 2022 to the region, but there's also a growing following of listeners in the UK, in Germany, and Italy who tune in every week. And then, of course, the signal also gets out into the Middle East, blasts into parts of Central Asia and South Asia, especially Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, India, Nepal, Bangladesh. Gets into Southeast Asia very nicely, into Thailand, for instance, Indonesia. And then it also hits Australia, New Zealand quite clearly. And there's even reception possible far outside the target area. I've gotten reception reports from listeners in Reunion Island, in the Horn of Africa. The signal is actually pretty clear in there, so for all I know, there could be some folks in Somalia tuned in. There's no internet, but they might still listen. And even in North and South America, the broadcast comes through. The last show actually got some reception reports from listeners in the United States. There was even someone last week that got a signal of the broadcast in East Texas who got listenable reception, and there was also a listener who sent in a reception report in Montevideo, Uruguay, who also got a good signal. So that broadcast on 17810 reaches, it seems like it reaches everywhere, honestly. So just remember that broadcast, 15:30 UTC every Monday. That's 11:30 a.m. Eastern every Monday. That's the big broadcast, 250 kilowatts of power. It costs a lot to keep it going, but at this point, even if I run it at a net loss, I'm just going to keep it going at this point because it's one of those things. I think if I stopped it, would I regret it? I sure would. So I'm just going to keep it going, and if I lose some money on it, it is what it is. But that's why I'm sort of doing with the sponsorships and the ad reads and all of that. It helps minimize anything there. And then just remember the broadcasts on 4840 kilohertz. That's 2 a.m. Eastern every Saturday morning. It's for listeners in North America. And then midnight Eastern every Monday morning. I always say everyone thinks of that as Sunday evening. That's 11 p.m. Central, Sunday evening. Both of those are on 4840 kilohertz. Signal is mostly for listeners in North America, the Caribbean, and Central America, although reception could also extend into parts of Western Europe, West Africa, parts of Northern South America, and the Pacific as well. And then the rebroadcasts on 5950 kilohertz, that's at 7 p.m. Eastern every Saturday, and 8 p.m. Eastern every Sunday. 5950 kilohertz, that's mostly for listeners in Eastern North America, particularly the east coast of the United States and Canada, the Deep South, and the Midwest, but worth checking out elsewhere, see if you get the signal or not. Those stay at the same times. And that's all that I have for you. Thanks for listening in, and until next time, be safe, be healthy, and I wish you all the very best. Take care. This is VORW.